What's up guys, this is Chris here, and today I just want to do an update on my home defense guns. We try to do one every year-ish. I'll probably do an EDC here in a couple months or a couple weeks as well. If you guys are interested in that, let me know in the comment section below. First off, I just want to say this is my choice for my specific location, my specific needs, and I'll tell you what those are and how they affected my choices. But I don't want this to be like an end-all be-all for you guys because everyone lives in different places, everyone has different needs, so different equipment is required. But that being said, before we get into the video, I do want to mention my Patreon supporters. Thank you guys very much. It's because of you we have cool guns and ammo on the channel, and if you want to support the channel, that's the best way to do it. We try to make honest gun content, and sometimes the industry doesn't like that, but we make it for you, so we appreciate your support. Just click the link in the description and it'll bring you right to Patreon. Also in that description is a link to a local shelter in Ames, Iowa. It's the YSS. Those kids could really use your help, so please go down there and donate to those kids. Now, I have a couple of different guns for home defense. I don't just use one, I actually use two, and the reason for that is two different specific situations. Firstly, I live out on a ranch. I live in, well, you could call it rural, but it'd be a bit of an understatement. I live in Iowa, and the nearest town is 2,000 people, and I live 7 miles from that. So there's nobody around. The police response time is very high in my area. No one's coming if I ask them to. The last time I called the police, it was 45 minutes before they got here. And that was about a pig. A pig wandered in my garage, and I had to lock it in my garage and wait for the cops to get here to take it to another house. It's Iowa problems. The main thing I need my guns for actually is not people defense, although I have had to do that as well. But first off, I use a handgun. And the reason why I use a handgun is because it's easy to grab and it's easy to get a hold of. And I think a lot of home defense situations, at least in my area and people I know, are false alarms. You usually hear something go bump in the night. It's not scary enough to call 911. It's not scary enough to grab a rifle and throw your body armor on, but it is concerning enough to go out and check it out. And those usually turn into the situations like, for example, somebody robbing your garage or somebody showing up at your house at 2 in the morning. The handgun is easy to carry and it's easy to grab really quick, and it's a very effective personal self-defense tool. If you think a 9mm is not effective for self-defense, you should look up some stuff. I mean, a 9mm pistol is a great choice. This is actually a Staccato C2. It is also one of my main carry guns and probably my favorite overall pistol on the market. I like it because it's stupid reliable. I like it because it has the controls and the feature set I like. I like to have a manual safety on my gun sometimes, but I really enjoy the battery arms of the 1911 since I grew up shooting 1911. So this is the most intuitive platform I have, and I don't want to have to think under stress. I just want to be able to do it, and in that case, this really works for me. I'm running a Surefire X300, and the reason for that is because I like to be able to defeat people with light if possible. I like to identify what I'm dealing with. The most likely scenario for break-ins is actually like drunk neighbors and uncles or people asking for directions in the middle of the night or whatever. Another possible scenario is the police showing up to your house, knocking on the door and telling you that there's an inmate loose, or telling me that somebody is in the area that's causing nefarious things, or down the road there's a car crash, or whatever it might be. It's not actually the highest percentage that somebody making a noise at night is actually a robber or a home invader. So it's nice to have a handgun in my opinion because it's quick to grab, it's easy to use. I can grab it and kind of stow it behind my back, or I can put it in a holster if I need to. In case the police show up, you're not armed to the teeth like Rambo and you don't get shot by accident or the ATF shoot your dog or something. So I like that for my own personal reasons. I also like it just because it's convenient, but I like it because it's effective, and the 2011 is very fast shooting. So that's why I picked the pistol, but why I picked the Staccato is because they're super reliable, super durable, and super quick. And if the worst case scenario ever did happen, you did have a home invasion of 3+ people, I want to be able to take care of that. I want to be able to take care of the scenario where your drunk uncle comes in and you flash the light at the ground without muzzling him, and you see it's him right away. You know, or you just turn the fucking lights on depending on where the light switch is. You handle that situation just fine. You can grab the gun conveniently and look out and see it's just a cat that knocked your dumpster open, or if 3 people break in your house, you have enough firepower to deal with that as well. And that leads me to the second thing, which is probably the most effective home defense weapon on the market in my personal opinion, and that is going to be an AR. The other weapon that we use for home defense is this. This is a BCM 11.5, BCM upper receiver, BCM barrel, and then it has a 2-way armament lower because this is my SBR. And it's also suppressed with a Canuter valve. It's super, super lightweight, This gun kitted out is like 5.5 pounds, and it's ambi, full ambi, and that's because my wife usually uses this gun. My wife likes an AR for home defense. She shoots very well with it. I think it's extremely effective. At close range, rifle rounds are super, super lethal, much more than a handgun. If you're looking for one-stop shots, like if a guy has a butcher knife and he comes in your house, you're like, oh fuck, this is what you want. You put one on him or two on him, he falls on the ground, everything's okay. And I like that. I have a Surefire Scout on here, and the reason for that is because this isn't just used for home defense. The suppressor and the long range light is actually because of coyotes. We have a lot of coyote issues out here. I've had to shoot coyotes in the past. I've shot coyotes with this gun, and sometimes we have issues at distance related because we live on a ranch that a lot of people wouldn't have in cities. I've had to take precision headshots at 75 yards on a moving coyote, so in which case I like an AR for that. But if I don't have time to put ear pro on, or I just simply forget, that's why I have the suppressor. Now, a lot of people, like the John Lovell crowd, which I appreciate, you want a super loud gun because if you have a fight, you want the neighbors to call the cops right away. Well, that doesn't apply to me. I have a shooting range at my house, and we shoot all day and night, and no matter how many rounds I fire, nobody's calling the cops, so I might as well keep my hearing and keep my safety, or keep my strategical awareness at least as well. I like to be able to hear and think, and that's why I have this. Super light, super effective, not completely hearing safe, but good enough. And I like that a lot. Now, I don't have any backup iron sights on the gun because I run aim point, and I never had a reason to. Honestly, my house isn't that long. The biggest distances inside the house for self-defense would be probably 10 yards, and I can just use the tube for that. I train a lot, and I can shoot from the hip pretty well too. Vertical grip to control the gun better. Keep it in tight, press it out when I want, and it's easy to pull it into my shoulder while I use the light. If you shoot a lot at night, you'll find out that it's kind of a different system that you use to control recoil when you're operating the light at the same time, and I like to have a vertical surface to push back on my shoulder when I'm doing that. I do have a sling. I have the T-Rex arm sling because it's super minimalist. I don't really like slings for dedicated home defense guns, I guess, or at least I didn't, but the reality is half the time now when I need a gun, I hear the fucking dogs barking, it's 1 in the morning, I gotta grab it, take the sling right out of this little bungee cord thing here, and put it on myself and go look around the yard for coyotes, or look in the garage, or look in the grain bin, or whatever it needs to be, and then I can just stick it back up in there. So it's kind of nice, it's kind of minimalist, and you don't have to use it if you don't want to. Geisley trigger, ambi safety, 45 degree, as I mentioned earlier, it's a Radian. I like those, they're the best, they're the most reliable. Radian charging handle, and I have a big old one on my home defense gun. And the reason for that is because I usually keep it like cruiser ready. So I keep the magazine in the gun with no round in the chamber. And that's just the way I like to keep it. And then when I pick it up, all I do is rack around the chamber and I'm ready to go. I'm accustomed to that battery of arms. I can do that intuitively and I like that. So that's the way I do it. If that's not the way you do it, that's totally fine. There's a lot of ways to skin a cat. I use Lancer magazines. They have steel feed lips. I find they're the most reliable and durable for a long period of time. That's just me. They're a little more expensive, but they're also clear so you can see when they're loaded and when they're not. That's super nice. The ammunition I'm using is 75 grain Boattail hollow points from Hornady. It's Hornady Black. It's meant for SBRs. Heavier bullets generally do better in shorter barrels, in my personal opinion. And this has a lot of ballistic tests on the internet, and it does incredibly well from a small gun. The ballistics on this and the performance is incredible. I mean, it looks like a fucking landmine going off. So I'm really happy with the ammunition choice. We're using a JP low mass carrier and a JP low mass buffer tube. Now, normally I wouldn't suggest that for home defense unless you vet it, but I have 6 of these now. JP is a company that I absolutely love. I use them in my competition ARs, and I like to have the same trigger, bolt, recoil system, everything in my home defense AR, because it just simulates it and it feels like I'm running the same thing. So I decided to opt for that, and that's what I did. If you're not comfortable with that and you're just using the standard bolt carrier, I'm cool with that. If you change anything or use a custom AR for home defense, I cannot stress to you enough how much you need to train with that and figure out whether that thing's gonna actually work. It's just like a custom Glock where you can put some new shit on it and all of a sudden it's unreliable, and AR's like that too. And sometimes it needs to be diagnosed, sometimes it needs to be tweaked. And if you're gonna be tweaking buffer tubes, you're gonna be tweaking bolt carrier groups, you really need to put a couple hundred rounds down and make sure that it's gonna work when you want it to. Those are my home defense guns. I choose a SBR because it's still light and capable with a suppressor. I like the suppressor for the reasons I mentioned. I use the 11.5 because I think it's the best barrel length for SBRs. or 12.5 maybe. I like 11.5 because it's short as possible. It still has the same amount of dwell time, and it still has ballistics that are capable up to 100 yards. As I mentioned before, I also shoot this at 100 yards. So we're in the process of moving. I'll be on a much bigger property. The barrel length might get longer, and you might see a magnifier or an LPVO on here. You got to change things depending on your environment. If you were at an apartment, would I recommend this setup? Maybe. I mean, the answer is like, where are you shooting? Where's your fields of fire? All that kind of stuff. If you're worried about over penetration, 5.56 doesn't actually over penetrate that much, as long as you hit a watery substance first. And the bullet tends to break up in drywall, sort of, as long as it's high velocity and it's not like a green tip or anything like that. But just choose your ammo accordingly. If it's a hollow point, you should be all right. However, over penetration is less of a factor in real life than people give it credit for, because as long as you shoot the fucking guy first, you usually don't have too much over penetration issue. But that being said, practice with your gun, make sure it's reliable. If it's a handgun, practice double with it, because it's harder to shoot than a rifle. A rifle is more points of contact, easier to shoot, trust me. More intuitive, especially with a dot. Dots take a lot of practice to pull up and use under stress with a handgun. So if you're gonna use a handgun, train a lot. If you're gonna use a rifle, train a lot. If you're gonna use custom shit, train even more. I also forgot to mention the ammunition in the handgun is Hornady Critical Duty. Now, I like Hornady a lot, and I know it's not the best out there. Federal HST is another great round. There's many, many great rounds. I like Critical Duty just because I'm used to it. I've done ballistic gel tests with it in real life. I've seen a lot of tests, and it's just an ammunition that I'm familiar, comfortable with, and have hundreds and hundreds of rounds down range. One of the reasons that you pick the self-defense ammo that you do is your own personal choices. And are there maybe better ammo that expands better or has better penetration? Maybe, but the reality is I'm not going to spend a couple $1,000s throwing hundreds of rounds of that downrange just to change up for something slightly better. I know this works, and I feel comfortable and confident with it, and that's what's important. I also keep a couple of spare magazines in case you have a malfunction, and I also keep a couple of spare AR mags as well. People say that's probably an overreach or like too much, but when in doubt, you never have enough, in my personal opinion. I've been in a bunch of fights in my lifetime where I wish I had more than I did, and I'm not gonna make that same mistake again. Other considerations and part of our setup is gonna be medical kit. We have a blowout kit in here, we have a big medical kit, and believe it or not, we have a fire extinguisher all right next to the gun, because those are things that can also kill you. Spoiler alert, when somebody breaks in your house and you shoot them, they might shoot back, or they might shoot you first. So a blowout kit's nice, and so is a set of armor. This is a Cry Precision JPC with my 2 extra magazines, and if you have time to put this on, maybe it's a good idea. Ballistic protection is ballistic protection, so med kit's nice, armor's nice, and a cell phone. It's amazing to me how many people I've met that sleep with a gun but they don't sleep with a cell phone. Like, you need to have some tactics, you need to know what might happen. Usually your house only has a couple of entrances, whether that be a window on the ground floor, whether that be a door that's easy to kick in that maybe doesn't have steps in front of it or something, or a large window that you leave open. Whatever the case may be, if those are your main entry points, I would have a strategy for each one of those, and I would figure out what is most likely going to happen. Like, are you going to have to run downstairs and get your kids? The best case scenario for me, or at least what I think would be the best, especially for smaller statured people, is going to be to get the kids into the bedroom or the safest room in the house, barricade yourself in there, shut the door, hide behind the bed with a gun, and call fucking 911. So in order to do that, you're gonna have to have a plan and a cell phone. I would add both of those to your list. I also want to mention that home defense is a layered system. Keep that in mind. You want to have alarms, you want to have door locks, you want to have cameras, and it's awful nice to have dogs. In my personal experience, when I went to school to be a police officer, one of the first things we learned is that nothing keeps people out of your house like freaking dogs. Nobody wants to get into a house with a bunch of dogs barking, and nobody wants to get bit in the ass and then shot. So dogs are a great thing. Even if you are anti-gun, get a big fucking dog. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Please support your local homeless shelters, and remember to recycle. I'll check you later.
You're not scaring anyone, Dange. You're just a goofy little guy.
That's why you gotta have more than one.